We've been in a series now for a little while that I've called Restored. So a restoration is a beautiful thing. You ever seen a car that was restored? You ever seen a car before and after? You ever seen a house that was restored? I'm restoring the house that I live in right now. Well, the people I'm hiring are restoring it. I'm not doing very much of the actual work myself, but it's being restored from what it was to what it is. Restorations are beautiful things. But we have a God who has the ability to restore a human being. And that's important because every one of us, we are all broken in some area of our life. I have never met a perfect human being. I've never met one. We all have areas of deep brokenness inside of us. And if you suffered childhood trauma, there is significant brokenness. You may not be aware of it, but we need this restoration power of God. And so this series that we've been doing is all about what God uses when he wants to restore a human being. And it's been rooted, and I said when I started this series, everything we're going to be talking about is rooted in something Jesus said. One day Jesus was asked, what's the greatest commandment? And Jesus said, the greatest commandment is this: you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. And there's so much in that single verse that we could spend so much time talking about. But for the purpose of this series, I said, here's what I want you to think about. It's as if Jesus is saying there are 4 key areas of your life that you have to keep track of. You have a heart, you have a soul, you have a mind, and you have physical strength. And all of these areas are affecting you every single day of your life. Now, for the purpose of our faith, Jesus said, here's the goal. This is it. This is why I teach. It's to try and create in all of us, reshape our lives until we get to the point where we love God with all our heart. Do you love God with all your heart? I'd be really interested to talk to you if you do, because I'm not there yet. How about all of your soul, or all your mind, or all your strength? This is what he said Christianity is about, is moving in the direction where we love him more and more and more to the point where we fully love God. That's the goal. It's not about rituals. It's not about religious ceremonies. It's about loving God like this. But for the purpose of this series, what I've been emphasizing is what Jesus taught here is that there are 4 key elements to who you are: your heart, your mind, your soul, and your strength. And it's as if I've said, and I want you to imagine, it's as if each of these areas has a gauge attached to it. So, for instance, you have physical strength today, and your gauge on your physical, when you're evaluating yourself physically, it could be empty. Some of you are exhausted. You needed the coffee today because you weren't making it through this time without that coffee because you're physically exhausted. Your gauge is on empty. Or some of you, you're like feeling great. You maybe just got back from a week of vacation. You were camping. You slept in every day. So you're like, woohoo, I'm feeling good. My gauge is strong. You can be anywhere in between, right? And it's your responsibility to monitor your 4 gauges: your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength. Because isn't it true? If you're going to love God with all your strength and you have no strength, you can't love him with all your strength. If you let yourself get physically run down to the point where your gauge is on empty, you can't love God with all your strength when you have no strength. So you have to learn how to monitor these 4 areas of your life, and you have to learn what it takes to replenish them. So last time I spoke, we've already covered physical strength. And by the way, if you go on to YouTube and type in my name, you can watch any of the messages in this series. As a matter of fact, you can watch all the messages from the last year. So if you... So we've covered physical strength, and last time I started by talking about this question. I asked you, where's your emotional gauge at? And I told you when I started this, we're gonna have to talk about this for 2 weeks. Last time what I started talking about is, some of you, if I asked you that question and asked you to tell me where where the mark is on your emotional gauge, some of you have no idea how to answer that question. You have never spent any real time thinking about what condition is my heart in. It's not a common thing in America, is it? Some of you have no idea what the condition of your heart is in today. And so we talked about last time, you have to learn first off how to pay attention to your own heart. Jesus said, love God with all your heart. Some of you don't even think about your heart. You can't love him with your heart if you're ignoring it. So we talked last time about how to connect deeply with your own heart. because that's where it begins. You can't recharge it if you don't even pay attention to it. Jesus wasn't just using filler words, by the way. He never just said something for effect. When he said, it's your responsibility to love God with all your heart, he meant it, and he expected that you and I would learn how to pay attention to what's going on inside our own hearts. So last time we talked about how do I learn to connect deeply with my own heart so that then we can talk about how to recharge it. Because some of you, your heart is on empty today. You feel numb in your heart. You feel disconnected from your heart. And the reality is, we live in a world right now that is really, really damaging to our hearts. Maybe more so than any other time. Post something. And it doesn't matter what you post, right? There are going to be people who try and shame you or tear you down. Eventually, there are all these people online who want to just tear down everything you say and do. And the result of that is, we get damaged. And it doesn't have to be online. It happens in real life, right? Years ago, if you learn to do what I'm saying right now, you can actually feel when your gauge is being drained. So one time, years and years ago, I was at this other church, and there was a staff member that was turned out to not be who I thought he was. So this staff member was removed, but one of the things that the staff member did was do a lot of... just lied about things that had not actually happened. So, pretty damaging stuff. And one day, a friend of mine in the church called me and said they wanted to come in and sit and meet with me. And so I'm no problem. So they came, and I just thought we were going to be talking. No, we were not going to be talking. This person had listened to what this other person had said, believed the lies, and was there to attack me. Did not know that. So started out in my office, and the person said immediately, I don't want to be in here because I think you're going to do this. And I was like, what? I'm not doing that. So immediately I'm like, okay, this is going to be a tense meeting. And I was a little bit defensive right away, and this person just immediately, we went to a different room and immediately started accusing me of being a liar. It's like, what? And so what this person did is they would bring up an accusation, and when I would start to talk about it, they immediately called me a liar and moved on to the next accusation. And after a few minutes of this, I could see we weren't going to have a dialogue. They just wanted to say all these mean things to me. So I stood up and I said, I gladly would meet with you with somebody else here, but this isn't productive, so I'm going to walk away. So I walked down to my office. They followed me right to my office, wouldn't stop talking. I turned around to my office door and I said, listen, this isn't working. Why are you saying these things? And they just kept saying them. So I didn't know how to stop them. They weren't going to leave. So I walked in and shut the door. So then they walked into the office next to mine and began to say these awful things about me to the staff member in that office. And I could hear it through the walls. And I'm like, what do I do now? How do I stop this person? So I didn't want that staff member to have to deal with it. So I got up and I walked in and I said, what are you doing? And then turned right back to me and just kept going with these awful things. The other staff member and I began to beg this person to stop. Wouldn't stop. I was getting so hurt by this. Emotionally, I was really when I'm saying begging, I was begging to stop. And the person walked right up to my nose and said, why are you upset? I'm not upset. And they weren't. They were saying this to me like they were sharing their shopping list at Piggly Wiggly. I got to go get some mayonnaise. I got to go pick up some grapes because we're out. And that's how they were saying it, a calm voice, as they just tore me to pieces. I'd never seen anything like it. The only reason they stopped that day, our begging didn't stop them at all. A person started to walk in from the outside, and I said, do you want to do this in front of this stranger that's walking in? And the moment this person realized that somebody else was about to see it, they turned around and walked out. My gauge went to E. When we finally got a chance to have some people intervene and mediate in this meeting, the first thing that person said to me was, I just wanted to hurt you like you've hurt me and so many others. I was stunned. Who does that? Who does that? But you might be able to think of people in your life who do that, who just hurt you on purpose. You have these emotionally draining experiences, your gauge goes to empty. Now, how do you know when your emotional gauge is on empty? There are very clear signs. You have unceasing fatigue. I'm not talking about tired. You are weary to the core of who you are. Sometimes you can't sleep at night. You ever have that? You're so hurt by what's happened to you that you can't sleep at night and you replay it over and over and over and over again. You ever have that? You can get physically sick, stomach aches, pain, you can't eat, you cry easily. Sometimes it takes you all the way down where you feel numb. Even things that you normally enjoy, you can't enjoy. You ever been at that point of emotional drain? You find yourself being irritable, snapping, getting angry quickly. You don't have any motivation. You have this hopeless feeling. Now, here's the question. Again, do you see any of these signs in your life today? Some of you can think of times when you felt this way, but some of you see signs of these signs in your life right now. This is why what we're talking about last time and this time is so important. If you're not here today, I hate to tell you, you're going to be here at some point in your future. This is the world we live in. It's a highly critical and very cruel world. And you're going to reach this point of emotional drain. So that's why you have to learn how to connect and listen to your heart and then know what to do to recharge it. So as we continue this series today, we're going to talk about how do I recharge my heart. Would you please open up your program, take out the notes inside that you'll find. Grab a pen, there'll be some things you'll want to fill in. If you didn't get a program when you walked in today, if you just slip your hands up, we can make sure that we get one of these to you, or just walk to the back and get one. By the way, you can get coffee and a cookie, whatever you want. You won't bother me. Go get some snacks. And then grab a pen. Welcome to those of you watching on YouTube as well. In the comment section below are these notes. I really encourage you to open the notes up and follow along as we go through this today. There are going to be some really important things we're talking about. And let's just jump right into this. If you're going to recharge your emotional gauge, this is the first thing you have to learn how to do. And this is do what you love to counter these emotionally draining experiences. You have to learn how to do what you love to counteract these emotionally draining experiences. I read about a pastor who pastored a huge church, and he reached a point of emotional emptiness. Didn't have any context for it, didn't know what was happening. One day he was working on this new series that he was going to be doing, and it was extremely difficult. And pastors know it's like sometimes you're working on a message and it just doesn't come together at all. And we always have a clock ticking. Sunday's coming, and you got to say something. So it's like constant deadlines, constant pressure. And so it was a big series, big church. He was so stressed and he was sitting there working, couldn't get it to come together. And all of a sudden he just burst into tears. He started crying at his desk. And he's not one of those crying guys. And it took a long time for him to get composure again and pull himself together. He's like, that was weird. What just happened? And then a short time later, it happened again. And he thought, am I having a midlife crisis? What's going on? Why am I crying like this? I don't even understand this. And so he started checking what many of you know to check. So he checked his physical gauge, and he actually used the word gauges. He checked am I doing okay physically? Yeah, he was still working out, exercising, eating healthy, so it wasn't anything wrong with him physically. And he checked his spiritual gauge. Is his soul connected to God? Yep, everything seems okay there. And that's when he discovered, for the first time in his life, when he started to break down emotionally, that he has a heart gauge, an emotional gauge. And he had ignored it all his life, like many of us have. If I ask you again, what's the condition of your heart? Many of you can't even answer the question. And yet it's affecting us. And here's how it's affecting us. I really want you to understand this. When you physically get exhausted, you want to take a nap. When you emotionally get exhausted, when that one goes to zero or empty, you want to quit. When I'm physically exhausted, I want a nap. When I'm emotionally exhausted, I just want to give up. There is a big difference. There's a big difference. So you have to understand this is what's happening. Now, there are all kinds of drains, like I said, to us emotionally. Take a look at this list. How many things could we put on a list like this that drain us emotionally? You have a big loss, or you fail at something significant, or you're betrayed. You ever been betrayed by somebody you trusted? Oh my goodness, talk about an emotional drain. You lose someone you love, or you go through a divorce, or you are diagnosed with something, or the last one. This may be the number one cause of emotional drain. Go through conflict with someone important to you. Some of you are fighting with someone emotional that you're close to right now, and you're not very close to them right now because you're fighting with them. You have conflict in this important relationship, and the result is this nonstop drain. Now, all of us have these in common, but then it's not just these events that happen in our lives, it's also people. There are people that can drain you emotionally. See if any of these sound familiar. You ever have anyone in your life who never is responsible for anything? It's always someone else's fault. Isn't that exhausting emotionally to deal with them? It's always someone else's fault. How about somebody who is self-destructive? You ever watch someone you love go down the path of alcohol or drugs? You ever watch that? Talk about an emotional drain. Devastating. Highly critical people. Do you have any in your life? Yeah, they just drain the life out of us. Jealous people, image-driven people. How about selfish people? Do you have anyone in your life that it is always about them all the time? Some of you are starting to realize as you look at lists like this, it's like, man, no wonder my gauge is low. I got a lot on both of these lists, or maybe this is the one, right? And then here's the other part of this, emotional draining experiences. Then there are some that are just specific to us. I have a friend who is energized by conflict. I am not energized by conflict. But I am energized by problems, which is weird, right? Not people problems, problems. Where there's something big and we got to figure it out and we got to create a solution to it, that energizes me. For some of you, just listening to me describe it makes you go, right? So all of us have unique ones too. There are things that drain me that don't drain you, they energize me, and vice versa. So this is how you deal with this. First thing, you've got to identify your emotionally draining experiences, because there are some elements that are unique to us. My friend is energized by conflict, so my friend would not put this in the list. I am not energized by conflict. Conflict drains me. It doesn't energize me. And again, if you want to see what we're talking about, you can look at in the pages of the Bible, you can see this happening. We just don't always recognize what we're reading in the Bible. One of the greatest people in the Bible was a man named Elijah. Elijah was one of the greatest prophets in the Bible. Matter of fact, one of only two people, did you know this? One of only two people in the Bible who didn't die. God took them to heaven without dying. Elijah was one of them. This was an amazing man of God who had incredible experiences with God. And yet, the king and queen of the nation of Israel, where he was the prophet, were wicked and evil people who were constantly threatening his life. One time, God does this incredible miracle, and Elijah's vindicated, and the king seems like he's coming around, and everything looks like it's going good, and then the queen hears about what happens, and she says, "You're going to be dead by this time tomorrow. I'm going to kill you." And again, his life is threatened, which has been threatened over and over and over again. But this time, something happens inside of Elijah. And take a look at what happens in the verse. Elijah was afraid. And he fled for his life. And he sat down under a solitary broom tree and prayed that he might die. That's emotional exhaustion. Remember, when I'm physically exhausted, I want a nap. When I'm emotionally exhausted, I want to quit. Have you ever been so emotionally exhausted that you wanted to quit on life? In those moments where you didn't want to even live anymore, your emotional gauge was telling you, I'm on empty. Just like Elijah. So you have to know what to do in those moments when this takes place. And again, part of this is specific to you. You need to think about what are the situations that I face in my life that drain me emotionally. And you're trying to do what you can to limit those experiences. Now, when in some situations, you have some control over that. For instance, some of the people in your family are so toxic to you emotionally, they drain the very life out of you, and you have to limit how much time you're going to spend around them, right? And that's okay to do. We've talked about that many times, that God gives you permission in the pages of the Bible to separate from people who damage you. Matter of fact, he commands it. And this message isn't about that today. But sometimes you don't have any say about limiting, you can't pull away from them because you're going to be at work with them tomorrow. And you can't just quit your job because you don't have another one lined up. And you're just like, what do I do now? Okay? In the situations where you have to be around them, where you have to be in these situations and they're not going to go away for a while, then the second thing you need to make sure you're doing is you need to do more of the things that you love, things that can add energy back into this area of your life, because you're going to have the draining things. And this is how God created us. God created you. Here's what I want you to know. God created you so that certain things in your life, when you do them, they restore your emotional gauge. He made you that way. Matter of fact, God gets a bad rap. God is often looked on, at many people in our society, as like he's some cosmic killjoy. He's just out to take all your fun away. And people don't realize that verses like this are actually in the Bible. Look at this. Go ahead, eat your food with joy and drink your wine with a happy heart. God approves of this. God isn't happy when you're suffering. He wants you to go to Bob's and have a glass of wine and eat the barbecue. And he says, yeah, I approve that. Thumbs up. It's like, I could never say that about God. Well, the Bible does. The Bible says he's happy when we're enjoying life. Isn't that crazy? Do you even think of God that way? That's the right story. And we know this because God has created us so that when we do certain activities in our life, they give us emotional energy. There are two things. So if I were to ask you today, what are the things that when you do them, they emotionally give you strength? Could you name anything? You should be able to. If you're paying attention to your heart, you should be able to list things that have brought you energy over the years. For instance, two things that I've known for a long time about me that give me tremendous emotional energy. Give me a leadership book and a beach, and I am in heaven. Let me read about leadership sitting by the water, and oh my goodness, I feel my gauge restored. Some of you, that sounds like torture. That's okay, it doesn't matter. I don't have to know your gauge, I don't know mine. And when I see mine getting low, I need to add in those things that restore my emotional gauge. The other thing that absolutely restores it with such speed is I like to write children's books. Rhyming, Dr. Seuss kind of children's books. I cannot tell you how much energy I get from that. I cannot tell you. Now, the interesting thing is I'm sitting here. So many times in my life, I can work for hours. Time just is gone. And I look up and it's like, oh my goodness, I passed all this time. That's what it's like. When you're doing the things that God wired you to do that create this kind of energy, that's what it's like. You look up and it's like, oh my goodness, I've spent 4 hours in the woods. I didn't even notice it. Because nature energizes some of you, or a hobby energizes some of you. And some of you know things from your past you used to do. As you're sitting here, you think about things that you used to do and you just haven't done them in a while. Nobody's going to do this for you. You have to know this. You're going to have these draining experiences. So you've got to know what recharges you. That's by the design of God. So think about that. God made you so that when you do these activities, they recharge you. What do you think he wants you to do? He wants you to do them. He takes pleasure when you and I are doing these things that restore our gauge. Now, there's a caution, and I have to say this because of the country that we live in and the time we live in. Don't settle for distractions. I am not saying that you're looking at that list and you see some of these signs. Some of you feel emotionally numb today. Some of you feel like hopeless. You feel like giving up. I am not saying go binge watch Netflix. I am not saying that. I am not saying go buy 12 bags of Doritos and 2 bottles of wine. I'm not saying that. I am not saying distractions. That's what we do in America. We distract ourselves. Distractions don't help. You know how many video game addicts there are? They can play for 12 hours. When the game is over and 12 hours later they reemerge into life, do they feel better? Is their gauge recharged? Nope. They've just numbed themselves during that time. I'm not saying numb yourself. That does you no good. I'm saying do things that bring emotional energy back to you. And you alone know that. I can't tell you what that is. I know what does it for me, what does it for you. This is where you begin. You're going to have these emotionally draining experiences, so you have to learn what are the things that God has created me so that when I do them, they add back energy to me. Now, the second thing I want to talk about, number 2, is now the other thing is you got to use music to encourage your heart. By the way, on your notes, I forgot to change that last part. I think your notes all say, to counter your mood swings, scribble that out. That was an earlier version. I forgot to change it. That's what I want you to know music can do. Music can encourage your heart. One of the things I did not have time to prep for today, and I'll do it at a future message, is another thing that really encourages your heart is humor. I just didn't have time to put it in this message, but obviously humor and laughter can really make a big difference on your heart and your emotional state. So in the hopeful benefit for any of you who are emotionally down a little bit today, there's a guy who walked into a bar. And he walked up to the guy sitting at the counter and he said, "Hey, you want to hear a Minnesota Viking fan joke?" And the guy turned over and said, "Before you tell your joke, pal, I'm 6'2", 220 pounds, and I'm a Minnesota Viking fan." The guy next to me, 6'4", 240 pounds, he's a Minnesota Viking fan. The guy next to him, 6'7", 280 pounds, and he's a Minnesota Viking fan. You still want to tell that joke? The Packer fan said, "No. Not if I'm going to have to repeat it 3 times. Share with others. So humor works well. And like I said, we'll do something in the future that is just about humor. But for today, I really want to focus on, but I couldn't pass that up. I want to focus on music because it is an underestimated part of what God wants to use in our life. Matter of fact, there's this really amazing story in the Bible. The nation of Israel was surrounded. This huge army came up to attack Israel, and they were just overwhelming. No way they could win. So the Israelites did this crazy thing. They prayed this beautiful prayer. That's not the crazy part. They prayed this beautiful prayer to God. I've taught on it in the past. I will teach on it. It's one of my favorite prayers in the Bible. It's a prayer of dependence and faith. It's beautiful. Then they line up to battle. And how do you line up to battle when you're going out to fight an enemy you can't win? Well, you ever seen pictures like the old military things? They put the guys with the biggest shields up front with those 20-foot long spears, No, that's not how they lined up. They did one of the craziest things in the Bible. After consulting the leaders of the people, the king appointed singers to walk ahead of the army. How'd you like to be in the choir that day? You thought you were going to be in the choir. I'm signing up for choir so I don't have to go out for football. And you thought, okay, I'll be in the back. I'll be singing at everybody's funeral. And the king says, all right, all you in the choir, get to the front. And look at what they were singing. They were singing to the Lord. And look what they were doing. They're praising him for his holy splendor. The Bible says that God lives in unapproachable light. So pure, so beautiful, that if you and I saw him in our physical body, we would die. That's holy. And they were praising him for who he is, but not just who he is, but what he does. And look at what they were singing. Give thanks to the Lord. His faithful love endures forever. So you're in the front of an army marching out to certain defeat against an overwhelming enemy you cannot win against. And he lines them up to sing. Now, we're going to come back to this story because it's really significant. In the Bible, over and over again, there is the emphasis on music being attached to our spiritual faith. So many stories like that about worshiping God and using music in our lives. Interesting when you think about this and you look back through history, some of the greatest theologians of time. This man, Karl Barth, used music every single morning to set his mood for when he was writing his books. Every single day he used music to build his faith and get his mind ready to write or prepare sermons. Same thing with this man, one of the greatest theologians and speakers of the last century, Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones. And I put this quote up here. He used music the same way, but look at what he also said. The Christian faith is ultimately not only a matter of doctrine or understanding or of intellect, it is a condition of the heart. Now, I put it up here because it's rare in Christianity to hear those words. In Christianity in America, we talk about the head, and we talk about the head. And you go to churches and you get information and you get information and you get information because we emphasize the head. And yet there are people who've understood this, that it's not just about your mind and loving God with all your mind. It's also about loving God with all your heart. I thought that was a great quote. I'd put it up there. But he used music to set his mood. We know, you all know this. You all know that the music you listen to has a tremendous influence on your emotions, right? I like to work out. I work out 3 to 5 times a week, and when I'm not feeling like working out, I have a playlist on my phone. It's my workout music. And when I don't feel like working out, all I have to do is put on Def Leppard Hysteria, and now I want to work out. Immediately changes my mood. Some of you, it would change your mood, but not for better. But that's okay. We all have music that impacts our mood this directly. That's what I need. I don't want to work out. I put that on, and now I want to work out. Music impacts our moods. And what I'm saying is, why don't we ever think about using music to impact our moods in a positive way to build our faith? When your emotional gauge is down, one of the most underestimated emotional gauge replenishers is the music that we listen to. So today, I asked that in our singing time, we sing a song called The Reckless Love of God. So you just sang it. Some of you, it was the first time you've ever sang that song. I've talked about it before previously, but I wanted it up here today because this is one of the songs that I use when my gauge gets low. When I'm feeling really anxious or drained, that song is on my playlist on my phone. I have a playlist called Christian Music, and that's in there. And I thought, I should tell you why. Here's why I love that song. So just a couple of other things. I could tell you so much. So describing the love of God for me, and I want you to personalize it for you. It is overwhelming. It is never ending. Do you know it's never ending? If it could end, it wouldn't be never ending. And yet the Bible calls it eternal. God's love for you will never end. And reckless, I love the word reckless, because the idea of reckless from the author of the song is not that God is, we think of reckless as reckless drivers smashing into things. We think of it only as a negative. But reckless people, in this context, a reckless God doesn't care about his own safety. Was Jesus thinking about his own safety when he came? Was he thinking about what's best for him? No way. His love for us was so reckless in this context that he was willing to lay down his own life to die for us because you and I matter that much to God. And I love the imagery of the song. It's not that I'm chasing God down. It's that he's chasing me down. Why? Because when you love someone, you chase them, right? Some of you are sitting next to someone you chased, right? They may not even have been all that interested in you, but you wanted them. And your love caused the chase to happen. And the imagery of the song is, this is what our God is like. You may not feel very valuable. You may not feel very worthwhile. And God loves you so much, he's chasing you. Even when you're ignoring him, he's chasing you. And I love in the one part of the song, it says this about our God. There's no shadow you won't light up, no mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. No wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Now, even if talk about this, it creates so much emotion in me. Do you know why? Do you know why music that has Christian words like this can tremendously impact your emotional gauge? It changes the story in our head. You want to know why you feel certain things? This is why you feel what emotions you feel. You see and hear something, and instantly your brain is a storytelling machine. You don't have to think about it. Your brain just immediately tells a story. Now that story is going to create an emotion inside of you. That emotion is rooted in the story you just told yourself, and it determines how you act. So your feelings always come from the stories. They don't come from what you go through. You think that you're angry because of what you went through. No, you're angry because of the story you're telling yourself about what you went through. Because some of you have gone through something extremely painful, and the story in your head is, see, I deserve this. I'm just an unlovable person. Now, you're not aware of your stories. Your stories are instant. But every emotion you have isn't rooted in what you've gone through. It's rooted in the story that you're telling yourself. So I've had tremendous losses over the last few years. Just a ridiculous list of losses in the last couple of years. And the story in my head too often is, see, this is proof. You fundamentally aren't a lovable person. People can love you like a friend and love you from a distance, but if they get to know you, they won't love you. And then you see a story like, you sing a song like that. And you put the truth of God's word in your head and it changes the story. And that changes what you feel. Let's go back to that other verse. So this is the story of the crazy story in the Bible where they put the choir out in front of the army that's going to be slaughtered. Imagine what story was in their head as they're walking along. I mean, they could have been singing a song, we're marching to death now, and we're going to go get slaughtered. I mean, they could have put anything in their head. I mean, they were not going to win this battle. There was no way. They cannot win. The army's too big, too powerful, cannot happen. And yet they using music, put the right story in their head. They sang, they praised him because of his holy splendor. You are great. But not just a great God, because a great God that's unloving, who cares, right? You have a faithful love, which means you're walking right with us into this battle. And when they put that story in their head, they have faith and courage. And by the way, do you know how the story in the Bible ends? God sees their faith and goes, you get the holy, powerful, loving God right now in your life. And he takes out the army for them. There are no injuries that day. They come over the hill, the entire army's defeated. God took care of all of them. The only injury is from pulled back muscles from carrying all the loot back home. That's it. God loves it when we change the story. And music is so, so powerful for doing this. I don't care what musical style you like. For some of you, listening to that song, Reckless Love, may make you go, oh, who cares? You don't like that. Fine. Here's what you do. Go to YouTube and type in the musical style that you like and add the word Christian to it. So some of you like rap. There are a lot of people who like rap. Doesn't do it for me. That's fine. I don't care. It's like we're not going to argue about flavors of ice cream either. You just like what you like. So if you like rap, then go type in Christian rap and you will find all kinds of artists that pop up. And some of them will be crap. So don't listen to the rap crap that's Christian. Find the one that you like. Find the one you like. And let the words that they're singing tell a different story in your head. Some of you like rock. 101.5 is your station. All right. So type in Christian rock. And you will find tons of bands creating all kinds of music with that style, but the words will tell the right story in your head about God and love and faith. Whatever style you like. I wish I could tell you. I wish there was some way I could help you feel what I'm talking about. Recently, some big losses came my way. I was feeling sad and anxious, and I went on a walk that night with nothing but my phone and my headphones and that playlist. And as I listened to the songs in my Christian music playlist, the impact to my heart was so significant. By the time the walk was over, my gauge was replenished. I felt hope where I'd felt sadness, and I felt peace where I'd felt anxiety. From nothing but music. When your heart is down, part of why God talks about this so much in the Bible is because he intends you to use this. So start building your playlist. Some of you don't need to. You already know the songs that do it for you. Great. Then put them together, make them accessible so that when your heart is drained and you know it, you can use this. All right, one more that I'm going to just quickly give you. Number 3, develop supportive relationships. Develop these kind of supportive relationships. Doing things you love that God created you to do recharges you emotionally. Using music with Christian lyrics recharges you emotionally. And then one more thing, and that's people. Which is hard because sometimes people are the biggest drain in our lives, but people are also in the Bible one of the biggest restorative things. One author said, Prozac doesn't hold a candle to community, so start building yours. These are close friendships. Begin by thinking about the people you know who are amazing additions to your life. These are the people that are kind and push you to be a better version of yourself while always making you feel worthy and like you belong. You can be flawed and real with them. Do you have that? Who comes to mind when you think of people in your life that you can be flawed and real with? One of my favorite authors is Dr. Henry Cloud. He said, it's like we live in these four corners. No connection, bad connection, real connection, and fake connection. So here's how he describes them. There are people, maybe some of you live in corner number one, you are disconnected. And usually what happens when you live a disconnected life is you got hurt terribly at some point in your life. Usually trauma as a child. And you learn not to trust anyone. That was the story you started telling yourself. See, I can never trust a human being. They're all going to betray me. They're all going to hurt me. And that's how you live to this day. The story is driving your behavior. But unfortunately, you can never, ever heal in this corner. Never. So then there's corner number two. These are bad connections. You're being harmed. Some of you, when you're done spending time with certain people, you feel more anxiety than you felt before you went there, right? You have people like that? Sometimes you feel more inferior after you've left them. You feel more guilt, more fear. Do you have people in your life that when you walk out of their presence, you feel worse than before you went in there? Those are bad. That's corner number two. These are the people you want to isolate yourself from. And God, I wish I had time to show you from the Bible that God gives you permission to do that. Then there's corner number three, and this is where most Americans live, the pseudo-good connections. Is let the good times roll. These are the party friends, the people that you hang out with and you just do fun things with. And everybody needs people like this, but these are not the ones that God's going to use when he wants to change the gauge in your heart. Fourth corner. These are true connections. These are people who bring you emotional support. They give you wisdom. And here's that third one. They give you both grace. You never feel like you have to perform in front of these people, ever. But they give you truth. They love you enough to say to you what you need to hear. If they're grace alone, they're not in the fourth corner. They have to love you enough to give you reality-based feedback. Now, the interesting thing, if you even casually read the Bible, is you will see this. Look at this. Paul wrote and said, then the God who lifts up the downcast lifted our heads and our hearts with the arrival of Titus. Look at what he said. Look at the emotional words here. I went from worry to tranquility in no time. How? By the arrival of this man named Titus. When God wants to lift your heart, he uses people. Matter of fact, take a look at this. Paul said, I'm sending him to you for the express purpose that you may know about our circumstances and he may do what to your hearts? People encourage your hearts. People lift your hearts. Look at this. Your love has given me great joy and encouragement because you, brother, have refreshed the hearts of the Lord's people. You know how many verses I could put up here that say that God uses people to refresh your hearts, strengthen your hearts, encourage your hearts, build your hearts? The gauge goes up when you get these kind of people in your life. So how do you know if they're these kind of people? Here's the question. How do I feel during and after the interaction with this person? Do I feel more valued or more diminished, more accepted, more condemned? Do I feel like I can be authentic or more fake? Because if you can answer valued, accepted, authentic, then you're with the right people. Those are the fourth corner people that you need in your life, and these are the ones that are going to impact your life so significantly because God says if you want your... Matter of fact, let me tell you this. Some of you have suffered tremendous pain and you are not healing because you don't have the right people in your life. That's why you're not healing. You can't move on until you put fourth corner people in your life. People who give you both grace and truth. When you get them in your life, then you're going to start to heal. But here's the tricky part about this. It's not natural, right? You're not just going to form fourth corner friendships. You have to be intentional about it. And here's the problem. We're all busy. Super busy. And the very first thing most of us cut out, besides God, the very first thing we cut out are friendships and time with people we care about. Because we're just too busy for that. And the result is then we're only getting these draining experiences, not the refreshing experiences that God created to come to us through these fourth corner friendships. Some of you have done this. If I were to ask me, tell me the last time you spent some serious time with people you really love, you can't think of anything. You've so overscheduled your life, you're cutting this out to your own detriment. So as a church, in the fall, we're talking about doing a couple of things to help people build these relationships. We're talking about dinners for 8, which we've done in the past. If you, at a church I was in, where you just sign up anonymously to go to somebody's house and you have a dinner with 4 couples or 8 people. If you know, single, you can still go. And you can build friendships and relationships. We're also going to start some life groups in the fall, and you can sign up to go to somebody's house and study about God or some life issue, and those may be the places. But I didn't want to just bring this up and say, well, come back in a couple of months. Here's an idea that you can all start today. Even if you're not a huge football fan, it's football season. And you can have people over to your house to watch a game. Simplest thing. It is easy to invite anybody over. Hey, we're having some friends over for a football game. Would you come over? Bring a dip. There you go. All done. And almost everybody will say yes to that. And start building the relationships. Because some of those people you're going to have over and you're going to say, I'm not having them over next time. That's okay. You'll learn. Some people you connect with and some you don't, right? That's just natural. But some of those people you're going to have over and you're going to start to feel a connection with them. And it's a simple way just to start to take steps in this way. I know you're busy. I know you got a million reasons. I'll have to clean my house. I'll have to buy Doritos. Okay. It's worth it. It's really worth it. Let me have you bow your heads as we finish today. Some of you, when I gave that list of emotional, of how you feel when your emotions are drained to zero, to empty, you see a lot of things on that list. Some of you are sitting here, you feel so numb emotionally today. The idea of doing anything feels overwhelming, and I get it. I mean, that's a real sign that your gauge is on empty. You're going to have to do something you don't feel like doing, and I know how hard that is. I really encourage you, if that's where you're at today, to build your playlist, to intentionally choose to do something that you just love doing. And to take a risk of some kind to invite people into your life that could be in that fourth corner for you. Now, maybe you're just here and you're exploring God and exploring faith with us. The coolest thing, there's so many cool aspects to following Jesus. One of the greatest is that he said that what he wants to do is to come and make his home inside of you and me. That's why Jesus came. It's why he chased us down. Why he came to earth 2,000 years ago was to die on a cross to pay for what we've done that's wrong. God is holy. We are not. And what we've done has to be paid for, and Jesus paid it all. And if you will let Jesus, he will forgive you and give you this amazing gift of coming, among other things, forgiveness and coming to make his home inside of you, where he can do his work on your heart from within. He can do his work on your heart from within. If you want this incredible relationship, just with your head bowed, say something like this to him. Say, Jesus, I'm turning to you today. I know I need you. I believe you died on that cross for me, so I'm asking for your gift of forgiveness. I want you to begin to heal my heart from within. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, as we finish up today, can I ask you again to take this little cutout card in your program and take a moment, and even if you're a regular attender, just put your name down, and then if you have something you want us to pray for, just let us know. If you want to sign up to volunteer help, let us know. Maybe you just prayed and asked Jesus to forgive you. Check that box. Let us know what you've done today, or maybe you renew your commitment. Then just drop it in one of the 2 offering boxes back by the doors where you came in. Thank you so much for coming. We hope to see you again next time.